Welcome back, everybody. Today, we're going to be taking a deep dive into this blog post called "The Dangers of Dictating How Autistic People Should Interact."
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and it's from this website called Cheap ABA. I
Okay.
don't know if you've heard of that before.
Yeah, I mean, the name itself definitely catches your attention.
Yeah, for sure. And I think anyone who's familiar with the term ABA will probably have some opinions about this.
Definitely. And just for those who might not know, ABA stands for Applied Behavior Analysis, and it's a therapy that's often used with autistic individuals.
Right.
But it's actually become quite controversial within the community.
Yeah.
Some view it as helpful, while others see it as harmful and outdated. So.
Yeah, it's definitely a loaded term.
For sure.
And so this blog post is coming at it from that angle.
Yeah.
With
Yeah.
that background already there.
Exactly.
But what I found really interesting was how it digs into this idea of respecting individual choices and expressions within the autistic community.
And it really kind of tackles this idea head on. It's arguing against this notion that there's one right way to be autistic.
Yeah.
And it's actually challenging other autistic individuals who try to dictate, how others in the community should interact or behave.
Yeah, like it's calling out people within the community for being gatekeepers almost, which I thought was really interesting.
For sure.
And the blog post starts with this really interesting example that I wanted to get your take on.
Okay.
The author talks about AI-generated speech and how some people within the autistic community have criticized its use, claiming it's not real communication.
Right.
What do you think about that?
Well, I think the author makes a really strong point when they push back against that viewpoint.
Yeah.
Because they're arguing that dictating who can and cannot use this technology is not only harmful, but also based on a flawed understanding of communication itself. Like communication at its core is about conveying meaning. And whether that's done through spoken words or written text or even AI-generated speech, the core goal remains the same.
Yeah, you're still trying to get your meaning across.
Exactly.
So it's about finding what works for that individual and respecting their choice to communicate in whatever way feels most authentic to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the author even uses this phrase, like this really blunt phrase, newsflash, to kind of challenge that stereotype that autistic individuals are somehow less capable.
Right.
Just because they might communicate differently.
Yeah.
It's like this powerful reminder that we can't make assumptions about someone's intelligence or abilities based on their communication style or diagnosis.
Yeah, that really resonated with me because I think we all probably have been in situations where we felt pressure, even within a group or community that we identify with, to behave a certain way or to express yourself in a certain way that maybe doesn't feel completely authentic.
Oh, absolutely. I think that's a really universal human experience.
Yeah.
Like we all want to belong.
Yeah.
But sometimes that pressure to fit in can really stifle our individuality.
Exactly. And this author is calling for the opposite.
Yeah.
Like they're calling for a celebration of autistic diversity, not just in terms of communication styles, but in all aspects of how people experience and express their autism.
Right.
So it's about creating these safe spaces where individuals can be their authentic selves without fear of judgment or pressure to conform.
Exactly. And I think this really ties into this broader concept of neurodiversity.
Yeah.
Which, recognizes that neurological differences are a natural and valuable part of human diversity. It's about moving away from that idea that there's this normal way of thinking and behaving.
Yeah.
And embracing the fact that everyone experiences the world in their own unique way.
So instead of trying to fit everyone into a neat little box,
Yeah.
we should be celebrating the messiness and the complexity of human experience and moving beyond just tolerance and toward genuine acceptance and celebration
Absolutely.
of all neurological differences.
I love that.
Yeah, me too.
And that's where I think things get really interesting in this blog post.
Okay.
The author uses this really compelling analogy to kind of illustrate this idea of embracing diversity within a community.
Oh, I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Okay, so they talk about this group of musicians,
Okay.
all of whom play the guitar.
All right.
And these musicians, they come together to share their passion for the guitar.
Yeah.
Learn from each other and create beautiful music.
Makes sense.
But what happens when one of those guitarists decides they want to experiment with a different genre of music?
Yeah.
Or try out a new playing technique?
I can see where you're going with this.
Right.
Some of the other musicians might feel threatened not
Exactly.
uncomfortable with this change,
Yeah.
they might try to pressure that guitarist to stick to like the traditional way of playing.
Exactly. And the author uses this to kind of mirror what they see happening within the autistic community, where
Hmm.
sometimes there's this pressure
Yeah.
to conform to a certain way of being autistic.
Right, like there's only one way to play the guitar
Yeah,
or only one way to be autistic.
exactly. And that just doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
And so that's why the author is so passionate about promoting this idea of acceptance and understanding. We
Yeah.
need to create these spaces where autistic individuals feel safe
Right.
and empowered to express themselves authentically without that fear of judgment or the pressure to conform.
So how do we do that?
That's a great question. And I think a lot of it comes down to being mindful of our own biases and assumptions.
Yeah, for sure.
We all have them.
We do.
And it's really important to be aware of how they might be influencing our interactions with others.
It's hard though, right?
It
It's
is.
easy to just fall into those patterns of thinking without even realizing it.
It is, but once we start to become aware of those biases, then we can begin to challenge them.
Oh, yeah.
Like we can ask ourselves, why do I think this way? Or
Hmm.
is this belief really based on facts? Or is it just something I've always been told?
I like that.
Yeah,
And that kind of ties back to what you were saying earlier about listening.
absolutely.
Like, we need to be willing to listen to other people's perspectives, even if they're different from our own.
100% listening is key.
Yeah.
It's about really trying to understand where someone is coming from, even if you don't necessarily agree with their viewpoint.
And just being respectful.
Exactly.
Does it?
Even when we disagree, respectful disagreement is so essential for healthy dialogue.
Yeah.
We don't have to agree with everyone, but we can still treat each other with respect and try to learn from each other's experiences.
I think that's how we grow
Yeah.
as individuals, but also as a community.
Absolutely.
It's also important to remember that everyone has their own journey,
Right.
their own way of navigating the world.
For sure.
And that's true within the autistic community, just as it is in any other community.
You're absolutely right. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to life.
No.
What works for one person might not work for another, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's okay.
So instead of trying to force everyone into the same mold,
Right.
we should be celebrating the unique strengths and challenges that each individual brings to the table.
Exactly. And that's how we create like a truly inclusive and supportive community.
Yeah,
One where everyone feels seen and heard and valued for who they are.
I love that.
Me too. And I think that's a message that goes far beyond the autistic community.
Yeah.
It's something we can all take to heart in any community we're a part of.
For sure.
Yeah, and it's like that saying, if you've met one autistic person, you've met one autistic person.
Right.
Like there's such a wide spectrum of experiences within this community, and we need to be mindful of that
Yeah.
when we're interacting with people.
And that really highlights the danger of making generalizations. We can't assume that everyone who shares a certain label or diagnosis is going to experience the world in the same way.
Exactly. And that's where I thought this blog post's call to action was really powerful.
Oh, yeah.
The author encourages readers to share their own thoughts and experiences,
Uh-huh.
to really engage in a dialogue about how to create more inclusive spaces
Yeah.
within the autistic community.
It's an invitation to move beyond just passive acceptance
Yeah.
and towards active engagement,
I like that.
to challenge our own assumptions, listen to diverse perspectives,
Yeah.
and work together to build a community that truly values and celebrates those individual differences.
So for everyone listening right now,
Yeah.
what does this all mean for you?
That's a great question.
How can we take these ideas and apply them to our own lives and our own community?
Well, I think the key takeaway here is the importance of approaching each other with curiosity
Yeah.
and open-mindedness,
I like that.
to recognize that there's no one right way to be part of any community,
Right.
and that each individual brings their own unique strengths and challenges to the table.
It's about creating those spaces where people feel safe to be themselves,
Absolutely.
to express their needs and preferences, and to celebrate their individuality without fear of judgment.
And to be willing to learn and grow from each other,
Yes.
to challenge our own biases and assumptions, and to embrace the richness and complexity of human experience.
I love that. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive.
Wow, they went by fast.
I know, right? But before we go, I want to leave you with one final thought to ponder.
Okay, ready.
What are the potential downsides of assuming there's only one right way to be part of any community?
That's a really great question to reflect on.
Yeah, it challenges us to step outside of our comfort zones a little bit
Yeah,
and recognize the value of diversity and individual expression in all aspects of our lives.
I love that.
Well, thank you so much for joining us on this Dink Dive.
It was my pleasure.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep embracing the beauty of human differences.